I have this neighbor, and he smokes cigarettes. He smokes cigarettes outside. I would occasionally talk to him while we were both out there smoking. He'd start to talk in this heavily Russian accent about how he has something that's worth a lot of money. He comes back up to my apartment a couple minutes later, just brings in a duffel bag. If I could hold on to it for him for a couple of weeks while he was out of town, that'd be great. He starts taking out these books and books of stamps. He had stated that they were somewhere between like 1 and 2 million. These are wildly expensive stamps. Why on earth would you ask me to hold this ridiculously expensive stamp collection? And his words were, "You don't know me and I don't know you, and you have nothing against me. I'm assuming," which is what he said. And I said, "No, of course not." And he said, "Right, good."
And how long has it been now?
It's been months. What on earth happened, right? I know his previous address.
And you don't have his last name?
No.
And you said he was Russian, right?
Penny blacks could be worth up to 30,000 pounds. Who knows what else is in here then? There's also this article, one of these penny blacks being stolen from a collector.
This is not just a little stamp collection. There's more to this.
Is that a tattoo?
It is. It's actually my father's initials. He was a con man.
Are there parts of you that remind you of your father?
He was an excellent father. He just happened to be like a total sociopath and liar. I don't want an easy transition out of this. I want something like rough and bumpy and profitable.
It's odd. It's very odd. People can say one thing and be completely different.
It's like you got all the puzzle pieces and you know you have all the pieces. How do you put them together?
It's a frightening prospect to get close to the guy who stamps these are. I don't know what I'm doing.
You need some sunshine. You need some daylight.
I'm Joe Saunders. I am the director of The Penny Black.
Nice.
I'm Alexander Greer. I am the producer of The Penny Black,
Yeah.
the sound operator of
Yeah.
The Penny Black.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Many roles. Editor. We did it all.
Yeah.
So, I'm curious in twofolds how you met Will, and how far into this was he already when you guys met and decided to do this documentary?
So I met Will through Alex, actually. Alex is 8 years younger than me.
Mm-hmm.
We met at Columbia. I was in the master's program. He was undergraduate. And when I moved out to LA, I didn't know anybody but Alex. And so I started hanging out with him. And coincidentally, he was hanging out with Will, who he also doesn't know that well.
Yeah.
But we were just eating lunch, and we were all talking about what we did that weekend. And Will said, this neighbor of mine is this Russian guy, came over and gave me like this $1 million stamp collection. And he said it,
Matter of fact.
yeah, it's like
Nonchalant.
aware of how crazy it is, but also just like, yeah, I'm just gonna say this.
Right.
And everyone laughed, and I was like, wait, does this really happen? And he's like, yeah. And I didn't know if I believed him, so
Interesting.
so I was like, can I come over tomorrow and start shooting? And he was like, sure. And so we got there a week into it. So the neighbor had given him the stamps the week before.
Nice.
So he was to come back a week later. And that's what we thought was going to happen. We thought he was going to come back in a week.
So talk about how you approach following him and where you thought at the beginning of all this you would go with this angle. Were you interested in what the stamps represented, or were you more interested in following Will and seeing where he was going with what he was doing?
Well, at first, I mean, the story, as you mentioned, it takes on a lot of different focus points.
Yeah.
So at first it was just, what a crazy story. And the stamps were the story.
Right.
It was like, where did these come from? Clearly they're stolen. That was our thinking. Why did this guy have them? Why did you give them to him? Like, what's going on with this guy? So those questions were what we were trying to answer.
Yeah.
Those were the intriguing questions. And then as soon as I got to know Will a little bit more, and even Alex, like being a little bit better friends with him, started, the whole his father was a con man.
Yeah.
Came out. You didn't know that.
No,
right?
no. There's not to interrupt the story, but there's so much that you learn about somebody when you put a camera between
Right,
you
sure.
and them that you wouldn't otherwise ever talk about.
Right.
Yeah.
Was he very open from the beginning about all that?
He was with me during the shoot when he said that. It was just the two of us, and he spoke about it as if he had no problems speaking about it. And then when I mentioned it to Alex, I was like, "Did you know that Will's dad was a con artist?" And he had no idea. So obviously he doesn't talk about it in his friend circles.
Right.
I would like step away physically on production for like the really, really intimate moments, just because I didn't want my presence to influence anything.
Sure.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And he was very forthright in a lot of places, but he was very guarded in a lot of places too.
Yeah.
The cool thing about this movie, in terms of when you start interviewing people and putting things together, you guys have this great idea of a cinematic scope of how you design around the interview. Like it's like in this dark little corner, and it's very interesting. I assume that's by design, or was that a happy accident that it just happened that way?
I will admit there are a lot of happy accidents in this movie. But are you speaking of the really close?
Yeah, when you're interviewing Will, especially, there's the shadow over top of his face and things like that.
That was very manufactured. You know, I aimed the lights in a certain way, and I knew from the beginning, just because of the subject nature, that this was a bit of a mystery and kind of a noir. Fan of noir films myself, and it's taking place in LA, and there was so many questions, and we didn't know if Will was really our protagonist or our antagonist, and so playing with the visuals of that and like making it seem a little darker. And I remember at one point we were talking about this, and I was like, I think I want all of this shot at night. Like I think I want only night shoots. Like let's always try and do night shoots. And
we realized we started. I think it was when we were looking back to the footage, we realized like, oh shit, we're only shooting at night. And I think it was because we were working around like, schedules of day jobs.
Sure. Right.
And then at a certain point we're like, holy shit, like this is great. Like let's keep going just at night. There's so many weird side stories over the course of this production.
That's the interesting thing. Like, so documentary filmmaking is usually observation and usually interview based, and then you build the narrative around that. And it's typically you go into something with an idea, but you don't know exactly what the idea is going to shape itself to be. Ultimately, when a documentary comes form, this is one of my favorite things about documentaries, is that it takes shape whether it is while you're filming or in an edit. And this just seemed to play out in so many. I can't imagine how you guys felt as things were getting revealed and as things were happening with coincidences and circumstances and things like that. Talk a little bit about how you guys managed that and where it turned for you and where you were like, okay, this is how we're going to approach this.
Yeah. I think we'll probably both have different answers. So
Nice.
I'll go first.
I have one.
I'll go first. Okay.
Yeah.
So, it was. Well, actually, you go first. I want to hear your answer first.
Okay. we had a board in our production office where, as like over the years, we were trying to lay out what the possible narratives could be.
Sure.
It's like we know this, like so it could possibly go here, it could possibly go here. So it was always like a straight line with like 3 to 5 different cards of where else it could go. And every time we got onto that next step,
Even if you hadn't shot that.
Yeah.
You were trying to predetermine.
We were dealing with so many like dangerous and unpredictable elements with this movie. We wanted to be safe when we filmed, so we would try to just sit and imagine every possible scenario that could happen. We just wanted to be really prepared while we were shooting, basically.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, it's fine.
It's a valid question because
Totally
like most of those branches never
Not
happened.
intended.
Well, this was the point of my story.
Yeah.
Was like every card that we laid out in like where the decision tree could go. Every time, every single card was invalid. And the card that would actually end up there would be something totally unexpected, totally unpredictable, that we never would have been able to imagine or write if we ever wanted to.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so it's funny because that's a great answer, but my answer is much more like looking back at everything we've shot and trying to remember the 5 years of when we would engage in production, because we would take months off.
Sure.
And just kind of.
And I'm sure he there's times when he wasn't so engaged in
exactly.
wanting to be a part of this.
Right, and it was usually when there was nothing new, coming up. Like if we're like, oh, there might be a thing here, and we'd like try to investigate it, and if nothing came of it, then we were just kind of like, well, where is this going? We don't know. And so there were always a moment when we would all get re-engaged, because either we find somebody, or somebody finds us, or whatever the new twist was, would always re-engage everybody, and we'd be like, how is this possible? And this was over 5 years.
Yeah.
So it's condensed into 90 minutes, which makes it seem like it's just going like that. But there was a lot of time where we were just like, I don't think this is ever going to get done.
Yeah.
But inevitably something would re-engage us, and it was always interesting.
I'm curious too, at what point, was it during the times that Will was disengaged with you guys that you guys decided to go on your own and start, because there's a moment when you guys become the subject and you're looking into certain things and following clues and doing that as well. And so I'm wondering, was it that at that point when Will was disengaged that you guys decided, hey, we're not doing anything, we need to start doing something with this film?
Yeah.
That, and also we weren't fully trusting Will at that point.
You wanted some answers.
Yeah, and it just became easier to not have to wrangle him.
Yeah.
And he's a fantastic guy. He's really smart. But anybody after 3 years of being like, hey, can we come and shoot you tonight? And he's got a girlfriend. He's he's doing he's living his life.
Yeah.
He doesn't always want to.
Which
do
also
it.
becomes an intriguing part of this movie.
Yeah. And we can understand that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we need answers, and we need to move this documentary along. So sometimes it just wasn't an option.
Mm-hmm.
We did have to bribe him a lot with dinner.
Oh my God, no! We had to bribe him once with painting a mural.
Right.
At a certain point, he had a business going. There was like a marketing business and also like a mural painting business, like artistic murals on the sides of like fancy restaurants and stuff. And we asked him if he would shoot with us one day, and he said he has a lot of work and that he couldn't do it. He had to help paint a mural, and he said that he would let us interview him if we came and helped paint a mural with him.
Yeah.
So we'd wake up at like 6 a.m. and
Well,
still have stains
our
of
response
paint.
was we'll help you paint it if we can shoot us helping you paint it. Which we did, but it was it wasn't interesting. So.
Yeah.
Yes, a lot of bribing. Bribing.
There's also some incredible shot selection in this movie. I want to get into the filmmaking aspect of this and the ideas that where you set up, and sometimes you had to set up in secret, and you had to find certain elements. There's an incredible shot across the courtyard when he's first in the restaurant. I think is one of the best. It's like French noir, one of the best shots I've seen in any film I've seen in a long time. It's amazing, and I'm just kind of curious. A lot of that probably was happy accidents, but did you guys look at this and go, okay, now this is the framework of what we're going to present? And
The best thing about that shoot, the happy accident was it was raining.
like
it never rains in LA, but that night it started raining.
Also,
And
every important shoot we ever had on this movie, through like a 4-year drought in Los Angeles, would rain and screw up production somehow.
wow.
Yeah.
I mean, so the reason we picked that bar is because they have these giant bay windows that open, and they're always open, and so we were gonna have Will sit at the bar like this, facing out, and Roman would naturally sit next to him, and they would have a conversation almost front facing. And I was gonna be across the street shooting them, and it was gonna be perfect, right? But because of the rain, the bar shut the windows.
Part of what I do and part of what my channel is that a lot of people engage here are indie artists, and they're always intrigued by how other indie artists pull things off. And so talk about a little bit about the sneaking around and the shots that like in the bars and the things that you had to do. Did you guys get permission from those places? How did you guys perform those and work those out? If you don't want to reveal, if it's too incriminating,
how much do we go into here? Okay, so we played reckless while being safe, basically.
Okay. Nice.
There was a lot of shooting first, asking questions later, and asking questions later meant like making sure we got a release, making sure we got permission for people to be on camera.
Nice.
But like I will say that when we were filming this, we didn't know the kind of people that we were interacting with, and like I was saying, we wanted things to be as predictable as possible, so we wanted to be as safe as possible. So that meant being a little covert sometimes.
And I think part of the intrigue of this documentary was that it was really happening, and it was really happening in real time.
Yeah.
That was an important part of it.
It's a huge part.
It plays
Yeah.
chronologically pretty much, and having to mess with the way that it was unfolding felt wrong. So a lot of shoot first, ask permission later. But also like just because of the nature of the documentary, we were not afraid to blur whatever we needed to if we weren't able to get permission.
Yeah.
So and it creates a more authentic viewing
Sure.
experience.
Also adds to the intrigue a little
Right.
bit. Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you guys love about indie film?
I mean, the greatest stuff about indie film is exactly what we did on this movie, which is like there's an idea out there. We're captivated by this idea. We hope other people are. We don't have any money, so what are we gonna do? I'm gonna use my T3i to start shooting. We're gonna.
I'll learn how to run sound.
Yeah, my producer's we're gonna get a Zoom and we're gonna plug it in and trial by error, like learn how to frame things, learn how to do sound, and it was really just a 2-man team. The entire shoot. It was the two of us and Will typically on any given shoot, or Cheryl. So that's fun because Alex and I work so well together.
Yeah.
And it was just calling each other and being like, all right, what do we need to get? Let's get this. And then it wasn't like let's make a crew sheet and do all this other stuff to get other people involved. We didn't need a catering service. It was just let's just go there and do it. We'll figure it out. We'll get it done. We'll do it on our terms. And it's exciting because we didn't have to wait for anybody on ourselves. And then we just got to answer to only ourselves when we were building it. In the edit, we just got to sit there and talk about it endlessly in every decision. And are we showing too much here? Are we showing too little? How does Will come off? Is the thing about and I'm gonna switch to editing real quick.
Yeah,
Just
please.
but the thing about editing Will, and it was most of our conversations when we were editing, was Will shows you every side of him in any given moment. So I would ask him the question would you want to steal the stamps very early? And he would say, well, if I stole the stamps, this is what I would do. And he would give very detailed information about that. And then he would say, but I wouldn't do that because of this. And then he would give very detailed information about that. And then he would say, but if this guy were to come back and maybe this would happen. And then he would give very detailed information about that. And the trick about editing that is you can't give all of those.
Yeah.
Because there's no through line then, and people are confused. They don't know what to latch onto. They don't know what to think of him.
Yeah.
Is he this, or this? And so we played with that, I think, a lot, trying to use all of those, because part of his personality is that he's always bouncing around to different things, and he's a chameleon, and he's smart, and he has a great imagination, and you want to show all that, but it gets muddled and confused when you try and condense something into 90 minutes.
Sure.
So picking the moments that we wanted to have represent Will, picking the moments of Will talking about what he's doing, and choosing the ones that best represent him in that moment was always a challenge, because we had to figure out which was the real one. Which is the one that Will most likely is deep down inside, is what he's feeling. And that was always a challenge, but it was fun because we just got to sit and talk about it.
And yeah, I'll say, to go back and answer your question about what I like about indie film, for doing something like this, Joe and I's creative process, but also just I don't know, experiencing life process and intellectual process. We have a lot of electric interest in things. We'll kind of find something that we're interested in and bounce ideas off of each other until we dig deeper into that thing. So doing this independently, the ability to do that unfettered by any sort of oversight, and to just be totally driven by passion and by intellectual curiosity is, again, unmatchable. That's awesome. That's almost worth not being paid to do anything while you're doing it. But almost.
But the thing is also we both have day jobs doing other things, and having this as a hobby. It's not even it's a passion. It's a passion.
Yeah.
It's a profession as well.
Pursuit.
Yeah.
Pursuit. Yeah.
And hopefully the idea is to get paid like any normal person. To do
Right.
But I think there are sacrifices.
What is it that you take away from this experience that you're going to apply to the next one?
I got an answer. You got
Okay,
an answer.
yeah,
Sure,
this
you
is
go
an
first.
interesting
Do your
answer.
answer.
So, one of the reasons I loved doing this documentary. So, just a little context. Alex and I did a documentary before this called Billy Mize and the Bakersfield Sound, and it was a music documentary using a lot of archive footage about this music scene that popped up in Bakersfield, California, this country music scene. And it was great. I loved it, and it was a straight documentary, lots of sit-down interviews talking about the past, and I used to work for NFL Films doing documentaries on football players, and same scenario, traditional documentary filmmaking. This felt much more like a narrative film. This felt like we were like a script was writing itself in front of us.
Yeah, right.
And that was really exciting. And I think the process of shooting this, both Alex and I started, just naturally coming up with thoughts or things were happening in our lives that we were like, well, we could start following this story, and I think documentary is hard.
Yeah.
And you usually don't, especially independent documentary where you don't get paid much, and half the job is raising money, and that's a part of the job that nobody ever wants to do. So I don't know if I would do something like this again, just because this was 5 years, and I'm glad it's over. And my wife hasn't known me when I'm not working on this documentary. So I think I would love to do something that happened in a day. And I would do a documentary like that if it was intriguing enough. But I think also like I'm really interested in actually doing narrative films.
Nice.
And doing more fiction.
Oh, that's going to be awesome. I would love to see you guys tackle a narrative.
Yeah, we should. You know any financiers?
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
Money is still an issue.
I can't help you there. But.
Yeah. I mean, that kind of ties into my answer. Like, I'm really torn at this point in the process as we look back and reflect on these past 5 or 6 years and we see the final product. Making this movie from a standpoint of discovery and intellectual curiosity and excitement and like feeling alive and adrenaline rushes in the shoot is it's unmatchable.
Yeah.
Like the process of making this movie on those levels was mind-blowing.
I gotta imagine there was a lot of times when you turned to each other and went, "Holy shit."
Every day we turned to each other and went, "Holy shit!" It was,
all the holy shit moments made it on screen.
Nice.
Pretty
oh
much.
no, a lot of holy shit
Yeah,
moments
maybe-
didn't make it on
that's
screen.
right.
We have a lot of holy shit moments on the cutting room floor.
I'm sorry. I don't speak Russian. Do you speak English?
Russian.
I'm sorry. I don't speak. I was just trying to get in touch with Roman. Is this the right number for him?
Ничего не понимаю. Это взрослая женщина, не знаю.
Okay.